Good morning. It is my absolute pleasure to be with you today. As Pete said, my name is Lois. I attend the Forge Church in Debenham. Just to introduce myself a little bit, I love watching the sunrise, I love swimming in the sea, and I love going for long runs followed by a massive brunch. And I saw some of you nodding there. I'm assuming it's the brunch, not the runs. But I'm also a teacher. I'm a year 6 teacher, and most of the time I absolutely love it. Obviously it has its ups and its downs. Can be ups being 6 weeks off over the summer, downs being people complaining that you get 6 weeks off over the summer. But I love teaching children new skills. I love their curiosity. I love their excitement. I love the funny things that they come out with. I love it when you get a breakthrough with that one particular child. The one thing I absolutely love are some of the questions that they ask. And here are some of the questions that I've been asked over the last couple of weeks. Miss, who's your favourite student? You won't tell. Can I go to the toilet? What are we doing? How old are you? When is it home time? What are we doing? Can I go to the toilet? Where's my pencil? But actually, sometimes they do actually ask me some more serious questions. You know, if renewable energy is so good for the environment, why doesn't everyone use it? How does a battery work? How can God be three in one? And why are mountains so tall? And one thing that I've learned as a teacher is that the children expect adults to know everything. They ask me question after question, expecting answer after answer. And most of the time, I can give them an answer. But sometimes I can't. Recently, I was in a maths lesson and a child had asked for my help. And I was reading the question over and over again, and a little part of me started to panic. Because although I had my little cheat sheet in front of me, I actually had no idea how to explain the answer. Like a complete mind blank. I was asked a question and I didn't know the answer. The child expected me to have the answer, but I didn't. And as I'm attempting to explain to this child, they're looking up at me, and I can tell by the look on their face that they know that I have absolutely no clue what I'm talking about. And I'm sure that there have been times in our lives when someone has asked us a question and we've not known the answer. Maybe from a child, from someone at work, a family member, or a friend. But I'm also sure that we've been on the other side of this. We've asked a question and it hasn't been answered. And I think that's actually really difficult because as humans, we crave certainty. We all carry questions, and maybe we've asked questions like, where did dinosaurs fit into the creation story? What came first, the chicken or the egg? Why does lightning happen? Why do they call it quicksand if we sink slowly? And why do pizzas come in square boxes? But actually, maybe in our lives we've asked some more serious questions. Maybe we found ourselves in a situation, a season, or a stage in life where it all feels very uncertain. And we've found ourselves asking questions like, what does my future like? Am I making the right decision? Why did that have to happen? Why didn't God answer that prayer? Why haven't I been healed? Why did that relationship have to end? Why can't I have children? Is life always going to be this difficult? Why did they have to pass away? And I think sometimes we expect our faith to kind of mean clarity. But if we're being honest, it can often feel like silence, waiting, uncertainty. We all have these big questions about the world, about our future, and it can make us feel worried, confused, and lost. We love the idea of following God when the path is clear, but what about when it isn't? What do we do when we don't have all the answers? What do we do when life feels uncertain? Where do we find these answers, and who or what should we trust? And the truth that I want to share with you today is that faith isn't actually about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who holds them. Now, I'm very much aware that we're in a series here at Greenfinch titled Ancient Wisdom for Modern Living, where you're looking at the book of Proverbs, which is a collection of practical life wisdom that I believe can still be applied to our lives today. So the question that I want to unpack with us is, what do we do when life feels uncertain and kind of those answers that we want don't come? And we're going to look today at Proverbs 3, 5-7, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil." We're going to spend a few minutes kind of unpacking these verses, and then we're going to have a look at what this kind of looks like in real life. So, to trust in the Lord with all your heart. I would love to stand here and confidently say that my first response is to always trust God. If I said that, I'd be lying. Because when life feels uncertain, we end up trusting all sorts of things. We trust Google. We trust social media. We trust our friends. We trust our instincts. We trust ourselves. And the problem with putting our trust in these things is that they're limited. They're human. They get it wrong, but God doesn't. God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We can trust God because he is consistent. We can trust God because he loves us. We can trust God because he is good and he has good plans for us. And the thing to understand is trusting God is relational, not informational. Just because we trust God, it doesn't mean he'll give us everything that we want. God's not a vending machine where we ask for something and he gives. Sometimes God might say yes, sometimes he might say no, and sometimes he might say not yet. Trusting God is relational, not informational. And when we trust God, life will probably still feel a little uncertain, but we can feel comfort with him by our side. The passage continues and it says, "Lean not on your own understanding." We love understanding. We absolutely love an explanation. We want clarity, and we live in a world where we're used to getting it. If we need information, we Google it. If we want something, you get next day delivery. And if we have an answer, if we have a question, we expect an answer immediately. But following God, it doesn't always look like that. Did you know that Solomon, the guy who wrote this, he's considered one of the wisest men ever. Yet he tells us not to lean on our own understanding. If one of the wisest guys in history didn't lean on his own understanding, then I'm pretty sure we shouldn't either. And I think that can be hard, because we really like control. We like knowing what's going to happen, having a say over what our future holds. Then the problem with trying to control everything is that our perspective is only partial. We only see fragments, whereas God sees the whole picture, the complete story. And we have to learn to seek God's wisdom rather than the wisdom of the world. And with that, it says, "In all your ways submit to him." Note that it says, "In all of your ways submit to him." Not just the ways that we find easy, not the ways that we don't care much about, not just on a Sunday morning. In all of your ways submit to him. And the Message translation, which just is another version kind of in the Bible, it words it like this. It says, "Listen to God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go." It means bringing God into everything. Your decisions, your worries, your plans, your uncertainty. We need to stop forcing timelines and start trusting God. We need to stop manipulating the outcomes and start trusting God. We need to stop trying to control how other people perceive us and start trusting God. We need to stop stressing over doors that haven't been opened yet and start trusting God. The verse continues, it says, and he will make your path straight. It doesn't say he'll make your path easy. It says straight, directed, guided. God never promised us an easy life. He doesn't promise to explain everything, but he does promise to lead. And if God promises to lead us, we need to make sure that we're following. We need to be spending time in the still, listening. We need to spend time praying, reading our Bible and discovering his promises and his plans. Because if it's his job to lead, then it's our job to trust. It might not be clear to us what we need to do in an uncertain area, but the path isn't always about what we are to do, but rather who we are to follow. Because faith isn't about having all the answers, it's about trusting the one who holds them. And the last part of the passage says this: do not be wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord and shun evil. Fearing the Lord is this natural response to trusting God. As we trust him, we come to know him better, leading to this natural reverence and awe. Kind of fear of the Lord, it doesn't mean to be scared of God. It means recognizing who he is, trusting that he sees more than what we see. And when we start to trust God, we stop acting like we know better than him, and we start living in his strength and for his glory. So Proverbs, it gives us this principle, but what does that actually look like in real life? What does it look like to trust in the Lord with all of our heart? What does it look like to lean not on our own understanding? What does it look like to submit our plans to him? And when I think about this kind of trust in the uncertainty, I'm reminded of somebody in the Bible called Hannah. We find the story of Hannah in a book called 1 Samuel in the Old Testament. Now, Hannah found herself in a really uncertain situation. A situation that caused questions for her. It caused doubt. It caused worry. And maybe there's a situation that has immediately come to your mind where life feels really uncertain. Maybe you're struggling to start a family. Maybe you're in a job that is completely draining you. Maybe there's a friendship or a relationship that feels completely strained. Maybe you've got a massive decision to make and you're not sure what to do. Or maybe someone's really sick and you're not too sure what the next couple of weeks or months are going to look like. Hannah found herself in a deeply painful and uncertain situation. She longed for a child. She desperately wanted a child, but month after month, year after year, nothing changed. And in that culture, kind of not being able to have children, it carried shame as well as sorrow. So this wasn't just disappointment, this was heartbreak, and she was probably questioning God in this uncertain situation. And it says in 1 Samuel 1 verse 10 that in her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And later on in this verse, she's accused of being drunk because as she was praying, her lips were moving but no sound was coming out. And she replies, I've not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. So how do we trust God? We pour out our soul to him. Hannah did not pretend that she was fine. She did not walk away from God. She brought her pain directly to him. If something feels uncertain, if something feels unbearable, pour out your soul to God. To me, I find it incredible that her greatest prayer came from her greatest suffering. In her pain, she didn't get immediate answers, but she leaned into a relationship. Because trusting God is relational, not informational. And the second thing we can do when we need to trust is to pray bold prayers. Hannah didn't just vent, she didn't just complain, she prayed boldly. She asked God for a son, but she also surrendered him before he was even born. She essentially said, Lord, if you give me this son, he will be yours. That is radical trust. Do we do the same? Do we give our greatest treasures to God? Or do we try and work it out for ourselves? And here's something that I love about the order of events in the story. Because we so often expect prayer, provision, peace. But for Hannah, it was prayer, peace, provision. After she prayed and surrendered the outcome, the scripture says that she went away and her face was no longer downcast. Nothing had changed externally. She was not pregnant. The situation was still uncertain, but she had peace. And that peace came not because she had the answer, but because she had placed her trust in God. And then eventually God did bless her with a son, Samuel, and she kept her promise. She entrusted her greatest treasure to God. That's trust. And this does not mean that God will answer every prayer in the way that we hope or in our timing. I think that's really important to say. But it does show us what trust can look like in uncertainty. Bringing your pain honestly, praying boldly, surrendering the outcome, and resting in God before anything has changed. Because faith is not about having all the answers, but it's about trusting the one who holds them. And if I'm being honest, the last couple of years for me, it's felt like one long transition season. There's been a lot of change, a lot of waiting, and a fair bit of uncertainty. A couple of years ago, I found myself walking through a really tough time. And I remember asking God again and again, what are you doing? Why is this happening? Can't you just give me some clarity? I wanted understanding, and I wanted the answers. But for a long time, they didn't come. For that whole year, 2 years, I could not see what God was doing. It didn't make sense. But I had a choice to make. I could lean on my own understanding. I could try and figure it out. I could try and control that situation, or I could trust him. Did I get that right all the time? No. There were moments that I doubted, moments I was frustrated, moments that I tried to figure it out in my own strength, but I kept coming back to that decision. I cannot get through this by myself. So I am going to trust God. I kept praying. I kept believing that even though I couldn't see it, God was working. That he was bigger and he was better and he had amazing plans that I could not understand. And now, looking back, I see what I could not see then. I can see now how God was moving, how he was shaping me, how he was closing some doors and opening others. How he was preparing me. And here's the thing. Now that uncertain situation is done, I find myself in a new uncertain situation. But I'm having to choose to trust God over and over again. Because faith is not about having all the answers, but it's about trusting the one who holds them. So let me ask you, what questions are you carrying right now? What uncertainty are you facing? Where do you wish that God would explain more? And I feel like for someone in this room, actually for them, they need to let go of this kind of like this desire to control that situation, whatever it is. For you, you need to change your thought from understand everything to trust God with that next step. And trusting God will look different for every single one of us. It might be trusting him with that decision that you're delaying. It might be trusting him in a waiting season. Trusting him when a prayer feels really unanswered, or trusting him when the future seems unclear. But I want you just to imagine, what would our lives look like if we actually lived like this? What would our lives look like if we fully trusted God in the uncertainty? A community that trusts God in uncertainty, moves forward in faith, doesn't need every answer. I think if we fully trust God with all of our heart, we will take bolder steps, we will be more generous, and we'll feel so much more at peace in the uncertainty. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Not some, not when it makes sense, all. And lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who holds them. You may not have clarity. You may not have all the answers, but you do have a God who sees the whole story. So trust him. Let me pray. Lord, we thank you that you are a good God. Thank you that you have good plans for our lives. We're sorry for the times when we've tried to work it out for ourselves, when we've relied on our own strength. We bring to mind an uncertain situation now, and we lay it down at your feet. Help us to trust you with this situation and not lean on our own understanding. Encourage us to share this with a close friend or family member who can support us with trusting you. Enable us to let go of that desire to control and trust you. Amen.